Visual Studio Code was released on April 2015, and by 2022, it became the most popular developer environment with almost 75% of programmers using it, according to Stack Overflow. And I think there is a few reasons. First, the pace of improvements is relentless. Every month, they have new releases with surprisingly useful updates. Also, Microsoft used an extremely permissive MIT license, which engaged with developers to provide a lot of community contributions. So it's currently working to add new artificial intelligence features. And I think it's like the first time we saw the Borg in Star Trek. It feels like a pivotal moment in the life of the product. So today I'm talking to Burke Holland. He is a principal developer advocate at Microsoft and a champion of the developer experience. Burke is a popular speaker at lots of conferences like GitHub Universe, Build, and really an all-around great guy. So Burke, how you doing?
What's up, Ray? That's the nicest intro anybody's ever given me.
Really?
Uh,
Wow. Well, I'm
yeah.
surprised. Good to have that then. I'll always relish that.
Are we live?
Yes,
Is
yes,
this
we're live.
live? All
I
right.
think
Where's it live
so.
at? I don't think I asked you
It's
that
an
before.
it's on YouTube and on LinkedIn.
It's on
So
the
let's see.
YouTubes. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the
Well,
YouTubes
great.
and the
Thank you for
LinkedIn.
having me, and it's nice to be with you on this.
Mhm.
What day is it? Oh, it's Thursday. Not that it
That's
matters
right.
anymore.
So can you talk a little bit about your journey to Microsoft? Everybody likes to know how people get to that huge company and maybe the Visual Studio Code team, and how did you get to be a principal developer advocate?
Yeah. That so like every story, mine is pretty interesting, but only to me, right? Like
I don't know
it's
about that.
boring
Yeah.
when I actually it's boring when I actually tell it. So in my case, I started out as a developer, working for enterprises. I worked for healthcare. I worked for a restaurant company that owned restaurants,
Hmm.
and just was building web apps and did a lot of jQuery and was doing a lot of JavaScript, mostly because I all proper programming languages made me feel inadequate, like I wasn't very good at coding. But when I did JavaScript, I felt like a genius. It's like you can do anything you want. So I primarily did that. So I really front end type stuff, and I actually interviewed with Microsoft several times in my mid to late 20s and was rejected like I don't know 4 times. And the fifth time they called me and asked me if I would like to interview for a position, I was like, I would not. Thank you for your call. So I I ended up going to work for a company called Telerik, which made
Hmm.
they made a lot of .NET tooling, but they were, if people remember back when jQuery was the hotness for a while, there was a lot of
Hmm.
UI tools that were built on jQuery. One of those was called Kendo UI,
Hmm.
which was a like data grids and calendars and like even things you wouldn't want to build, right? Like nobody wants to build a date picker. And so I was hired as the dev advocate for that company, which was kind of small at the time. And then I was there for several years, and 7 years, and we got acquired by a company called Progress, which I don't know that anyone has heard of, but they actually do a
Yeah.
lot. They, like a lot of the point of sale systems, I think, are anyway. And then at some
Hmm.
point along the way, I got a call from someone who had gone to Microsoft and was working on this new Azure advocacy team and said, "Do you want to come work here?" And I was like, "Not really, but
So were you playing hard again? Is this like part of your technique?
well, I think I just showed up for the interview and I was kind of like, yeah, I've been through this before, right? Like,
Mm.
you tell me why I should come work here." And I guess that worked better
I've
than
never tried that. Yeah, that
actually
never
being
have I.
interested.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate, I was kind of a fool, but I was fortunate enough in the long run, because it was such a great team full of talented people. And I was hired to work on JavaScript and Azure, but I ended up on the VS Code team because I loved VS Code so much. And I did a front end master's course on it, and I'd created this website called VS Code Can Do That. And I just wanted to play inside of VS Code all day, right? I didn't want to
Hmm.
do any of the other stuff they wanted me to do. I just wanted to do that. And so I just
It's
sort of
interesting.
weaseled my way
So hold
over
on.
in that
Talk about that, because I think it's really interesting that it's only been around for I think like 5 or whatever many years, and it wasn't the dominant platform. It very quickly grew to be like the dominant developer tool out there. So
yeah.
what was it about it that you think interested you?
Okay, so that's such a great question. I was at Build in 2015 working for Telerik when they announced VS Code. That was the event where they released it to the world. And I thought, what? Why? Right? We already have Sublime as a
That's
text
right.
editor. Oh, we don't need another text editor. But then I ended up switching to it at some point because I was doing TypeScript, and the TypeScript support that Visual Studio Code had was just superb, right? Like
Hmm.
it just kind of worked, and I needed that, so I ended up switching over. But really, I think what makes Visual Studio Code great, it's not Visual Studio Code, it's the extensions and the community of people that build those extensions for VS Code. That's what makes VS Code so great, is all of the amazing extensions and authors and contributions that people make. It's just stunning, the things that
Hmm.
you can do in VS Code that are enabled by folks that are out there building things on top of it. I think that's why it appeals to folks.
Yeah, so people might not remember that before there was like a bunch of different like other things where you talked about Sublime Text, but there was like Atom, from
That's right.
GitHub, which is a
Yeah,
fantastic product, and it
it
was
was very
great.
good.
And then BB Edit was like an early editor, did a great job, but there was something
Yeah.
about Visual Studio that just allowed it to dominate. I think, like you mentioned, TypeScript support. I mean, one of the things about Atom was that it wasn't built. I don't know if it was not necessarily like the latest tools, but the way it was built isn't how perhaps like I don't know, somebody like you and me would build it. So talk a little bit about that, sort of experience of the community being a part of the development of Visual Studio Code. You said you really like that, but how did that? Do you know how that happened, and how it works into a product that technically belongs to another company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when they launched it in 2015, when they launched it, it actually wasn't open source, but they knew that they wanted it to be. They knew that that was paramount for developers, and so they made that happen really quick. And the process now is essentially the same as it is for any large open source project. And so, people fork. We even have. I sent you some links, but
Hmm.
you can go in and even look for good first issues. And then if you look at our release notes every month, so we release every single month, there's a new release. There's just a huge list of people down there that have created, PRs and have contributed functionality to VS Code. And even when we do our internal meetings and we talk about the features that are in VS Code in the next release, we always meet before the release. Okay, like what's coming, so we know what's coming,
So
and
is
we'll
this
talk
this
about a feature.
discussions? Is it this page right here, the
No, no,
discussion
no.
sort of
It's
thing, or?
yeah. If you just go to, I think, didn't I send you?
I think you did, but I don't know
It's
exactly
just the
which one.
contributors guide for
Let's
VS
see if I
Code.
have it in here. Yeah, so if not, then I can watch it. There you are. I can look it up. Keep talking about how it's integrated though, and I'll
All
look it up
right.
in the doc.
Yeah, so it's and even when we're talking internally, we'll talk about features. They'll be like, yeah, this feature was contributed by such and such, from the community. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's freaking awesome. That's incredible. I mean, I have added zero contributions, but people out there are adding stuff all the time. And again, it's VS Code itself is an editor. It's good. It's the community that makes it what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of unique about the product, right? Like how it that just really I think shocked everyone. Like I don't know if Microsoft had done that before. First of all, gave the product like an MIT license to make it easy for people to contribute, and then just made the community contributions almost like a core part. How much like when you see that you guys have like monthly releases, and I love your release parties on YouTube, how often are contributions added to the core product, and how does that work?
Front, you mean third party contributions?
Yeah, like third party versus internal, stuff
Oh,
within Microsoft.
constantly. Yeah, constantly. If you look at any of the release notes, which we publish every month, if you just you go to code.visualstudio.com and go to updates, which is like one of the
Hmm.
top, and there's one for every single month, and you'll see we always list all the contributors in there. So they're a significant part of every single release that we have, without a
Hmm.
doubt.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, what is the process for getting something adopted by the team? Like, say I come up with an idea. How does that work? Like, I have an idea, so I want to program something. What would I even go use to get started building that type of thing? And then what's the process for getting it into the product?
Yeah, so I think there's two separate questions there. One of them is like, how do I just contribute generally? We have a
Hmm.
contributors guide, and we have a bunch of issues that we mark as good first issue. So if you just want to contribute to the Visual Studio Code project, see your
Hmm.
name and lights and release notes. That's a great way to do it. A lot of them are um, they're not huge things, right? The editor itself is there's a lot of code there, right? There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So you don't have to dive into the deep end. But if you do want to actually add a feature, we discuss, what features we're going to add first in the issues, and the engineers are extremely active on GitHub. And so if there's a lot of conversation on an issue, a lot of interest, there will be a lot of discussion, and then you can talk about with the team about submitting PRs there. But again, this is all I would direct people back to our contribution guide and how to
Yeah, I think it's this page, right?
yeah.
Contributing to Visual Studio Code. It has like a lot of details there
I
about,
that would be the one, yeah,
yeah,
on how to do it.
super. Yeah, so what is it programmed in? Is it TypeScript? Does it have Python components? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, it
Hmm.
is written in TypeScript, and
Hmm.
it's written in web technology. So if we back up to like how we got to where we are today, essentially way back in the beginning, a fellow named Eric Gamma was hired to Microsoft to build an editor that ran entirely in the browser, but it didn't feel like you were in the browser. And so Eric Gamma previously worked on Eclipse, okay, and then
Hmm.
he Microsoft and began working on something called Monaco, which was a browser-based editor. You can still go to the Monaco project today. You can still find the Monaco editor in a lot of places on the web. Um, and then that sort of that Monaco editor, they wanted to have more of an actual full-featured editor with extensions in the whole nine that you could
Hmm.
run locally. And so the combination of Electron, which allows you to build apps with web technologies, and the combination of Microsoft being more open to open source, the happenstance of those things in 2015 is what led to sort of VS Code as you know it today. And
Hmm.
they actually were using TypeScript early on, and the first prototype of Visual Studio also led to the first prototype of TypeScript. And again, I don't speak officially on behalf of Microsoft or TypeScript or VS Code, but this is history the way I know it. I've talked to people internally. So the VS Code, heavy, heavy, heavy first users of TypeScript, and to this day use TypeScript. And fun fact, Ray, would you like to guess which UI framework VS Code uses? Since it is built with web technologies, which UI framework does it use?
That is a really interesting question. So hold on. Is it like a JavaScript framework, or are you talking about like a visual
Right.
kind of framework?
Yeah, because there's so much
Oh,
going on,
okay.
right? You need binding, you need the whole nine. Things are changing over here. They need to change over here. It's got to be fast, right? It's got to be responsive.
See, like I want to say React, but I don't want to say React because that seems
Why
like the
why
obvious
is the
choice.
React the immediate go to? Just out
Well,
of
because it
curiosity.
feels like it was definitely, coming from the teaching background. I know that those are our most popular courses. Like React is the most popular platform out there. Not necessarily like, what I would love to go to these days. I mean, I feel like I love Svelte. I love the concept behind Svelte, but it's too new. So I'm gonna keep on guessing. I love
Okay.
Vue.js, so maybe that's a possible sort of feature there. Some of the other frameworks are too new, like Solid is too new, like Quick is too new. So what else? Ember? Could it be Ember? No, it couldn't be
Oh, Emmer's
Ember.
been around for a long time. Yeah.
I know. So I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, it's kind of a trick question. There's no UI framework
Ah,
used. It
how could you do this to me, Burke?
I know, I'm sorry. Because you look at something like that and you're like, surely they're using some UI framework, right? It would be impossible to
Hmm.
build something of that size without a UI framework. It's totally
That's
not.
pretty gutsy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just they have these little components that they make and they pass messages between these components.
Oh,
It's pretty
wow.
simple and it's extremely performant, right?
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
at all over engineered. And I found that fascinating when I learned it.
That is super interesting. No, that is super interesting. I'm wondering if now, and I know that there are things that are shifting from Electron because Electron can slow things down, and there are a lot of people kind of moving away to it. So I wonder if maybe that's in the future.
Well,
I know I think like Teams actually switched away from Electron. to some other things. So I wonder if that's going to be eventually, I don't think that Visual Studio Code is non-performant at all. It feels, for me, always super, fast. I know that a lot of people that came from other, frameworks or other platforms like Sublime Text, they always complain like, oh, it's just so much slower. And I guess Sublime Text uses Python, but I guess with Electron, I don't feel like it's any slower. But that's fascinating. Now I know how to trick anybody else. Like Morton,
Yeah, ask
I'll
him what
ask him.
UI
Yeah.
framework VS Code uses. I mean, to your point about Electron, I think that Electron gets a bad rap because whenever you're using web technologies, it's very easy to build something that doesn't perform well.
Hmm.
Um, it's just really easy to get tripped up by that. And so because that's just the case of web technology, it's the case with Electron apps as well. But since VS Code was always designed to be a browser-based editor, it's always been designed for the web and it's always been designed for speed. So by the time they got to Electron, you're sort of proving out that it's absolutely possible to build performant apps in Electron. It's
Hmm.
absolutely possible. It's just you have to be very intentional about it. And I know even VS Code, one of our engineers, Johannes, has a performance talk on this that people can look up or I can send to you. And
Hmm.
he talks about how they make it fast, and they've got this old machine that's like there's this baseline test that they do, and if it doesn't perform on this machine that like nobody should own, then they don't ship it, right? So it has to
Hmm.
perform really, really well in order for it to even see the light of day. I would
Hmm.
say, from time to time, I hear people saying they are having performance issues for this reason or that reason, and it is almost always caused by an extension. And if that ever
Hmm.
happens to you, you can do this in the command palette. There's a command called extension bisect, and you can
Hmm.
run that, and it will just what it does is it does a binary search, right? So basically, it takes your extensions, cuts them in half, and turns off half of them, and it says, okay, does the problem still exist? Right? Is your editor still slow? And if you say yes, then it knows that the problem is in then this half, and then it does half again. And it just keeps doing that until you get down to the extension that's the problem. So even if you
Hmm.
have like 100 extensions installed, I think it only takes like a max of 8 iterations, no matter how many extensions you have, to find the
Hmm.
culprit. It's pretty cool.
That is super cool. Wow, I think I could talk to you just about nerding out about the development for an hour, but let's focus.
All right.
Let's talk about how, in this age of AI, everybody's like trying to add some sort of AI features into the application, and you guys are integrating ChatGPT, with Copilot. How does that even work? Okay, so Microsoft has VS Code, you know, Copilot. Is it part of GitHub, but you guys also use it? How does that work? And then what are you guys planning on doing with integration?
Yeah. So Copilot, GitHub Copilot is an extension that is available for VS Code, and it's available for a lot of editors, right?
Hmm.
Not just VS Code. You don't have to be using VS Code to use GitHub Copilot. Um, Microsoft does own GitHub, but that team is separate, right? And they are
Hmm.
building for all editors and all folks, which is great,
Hmm.
right? We want people to be comfortable in the tools they're in and that are most productive for them. Um, so that said, we just wrote a blog post about this that I sent over to you as well. You can, and we'll be completely open about what we're thinking about in terms of AI. But in our minds, AI should really light up in all places in the editor where you might need it.
Hmm.
And that would be powered by, of course, GitHub Copilot, which is providing the access to the models, right? The
Hmm.
extension which lights all that up. But that's how VS Code thinks about AI in the editor. It's not just for code completion. It should be anywhere you might be doing anything in the editor.
That's great. And so you guys are adding that into VS Code as, I guess, in this new ChatGPT version. So like, is it an extension that you add? How do you sign up for the new kind of
Yeah, for the new, yeah,
ChatGPT?
you're talking about the new
Yeah.
experience. So I don't know. We can take a look at it if you want to real
Sure.
quickly, and
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely. Let's do
talk
it.
about it.
Let's check it out.
All right, let's do it. Let's see. Throw my screen up here. Okay, so the default experience for VS Code right now is, I'm gonna move my mic just a little bit. There we go. There's something we call ghost text. And so if you begin to type, so let's say router dot post And then see Copilot starts to try to anticipate, right? It's a user file, so maybe I want to do a login. So this is what people might know today. You can
Hmm.
also do things like, create a login route, I guess, and get the same result. So you can give it instructions with comments. So the chat is part of Copilot. And to
Hmm.
answer your question, there's a wait list for this, and
Hmm.
it's pretty lengthy at the moment, as you can imagine. And we are getting folks off the wait list and into the product as quickly as we can. But again, that has to be done by GitHub Copilot, and
Hmm.
that's a separate thing, right? I can't.
Hmm.
Don't email me. I can't help you. I can't even help myself. Um, so yeah, but we're trying the best we can as quickly as we
Hmm.
can. And also keep in mind as we go through here, we're pretty early on with a lot of this stuff. So if it does weird or bad things, just we're in preview mode at the moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
So as with ChatGPT, you can ask it anything. You just tell it good morning. But it's kind of scoped to helping you with programming questions. So we could say like, how do I use the Express generator?
Hmm. Good
And you
question.
can
Yeah.
see we get, kind of a longer, I'll make this sidebar bigger. We get kind of a longer response here. And we've put in some interactions in here. So like this right here just copies to your clipboard. And the other button copies it to the cursor location in your
Hmm.
file, right?
Oh, that's cool.
So
So hold on. It was context aware. Did it know that you were already like using, Node.js and Express somehow for this question? Because I
not
don't know
well
if
for
it.
this one I told it Express, but it is context aware. So if I say, what kind of project is this? So based on the code it provided, looks like this is a basic Express project, right? That's exactly what it is.
Mm,
So how
mhm,
does it know that? Well, it knows because it can see my open files, right? What
mhm.
it can't see is all of this stuff here. It doesn't just know about your entire project, but it knows about any files that you have open. So
That's
because I
interesting.
had
So I
to
didn't
do it,
know that. It does know about like any tabs that you have open, or is it just
it
the
does know, it
individual
knows about
file?
your tabs and a certain number of characters before and after your cursor.
Oh,
Because
wow.
remember, these models, and currently, so in the sidebar you're looking at, I think it's GPT-3.5 Turbo, but don't quote me on that. Again, y'all, this is preview. I don't know what it's
Hmm.
going to be by the time it ships, and GitHub is over that.
Hmm.
So Codex, which is what you see over here on the right side, it has a 14 kilobyte memory, and so
Hmm.
essentially it can't hold more than 14 kilobytes of data at one time. So that includes the response and the prompt and any history, right?
That
So
seems like
that's
a lot, though. I mean, if it's just text,
14
right?
kilobytes. It's roughly 500 lines of code, I believe, by the math.
I don't
Somewhere,
write any
somewhere in
more
that
than
neighborhood.
that. My code's a little smaller.
But it's not just endless, right? Like
Yeah.
it can't just read all of your code and digest that. It's not
Mm.
that would be impossible
Yeah. Yeah.
by today's standards. That said, some of these newer models have a bigger brain, right? And so
Hmm.
that's more context that we can add in, which gets you better answers.
Super.
Um, okay, so in this example, how much time do we have, Ray?
Oh, we've got like a whole hour. Let's see, like probably
Okay,
like 30 something minutes. But yeah, this is great
so
stuff.
let me give you an example of like AI kind of lighting up the whole editor.
Hmm.
So for instance, when you're working with Copilot, you're talking to these OpenAI models, and you can't just you can't just send it free text, or you'll get a pretty bad answer back. And so
Mm.
we're constructing prompts for you in the
Hmm.
background.
Mm.
And so, for instance, if we're going to light up places in VS Code, then you need to be able to ask Copilot questions about VS Code, and it needs to know that you're asking about VS Code specifically. So for instance, see it says terminal here. Like, let's just say that we don't know how to open the terminal in VS Code. So we have these topic
Mm.
commands here, and we can select VS Code, and then it says questions about VS Code. So it knows whatever I ask now is a question about VS Code. I've just scoped Copilot to this specific topic, which is super helpful because then I can just say open terminal. I think, right? I don't think I even need to be any more specific than that. Oh yeah, it's going to index. And again, we're in preview here, so I don't
Yeah,
know what this will be like
that's
when it
cool.
actually comes
So
in.
so that's great. You can put it on different modes. And I saw that there's like a simplify mode, I guess. So you could be tasking it out like a maybe a debug mode or a, documentation kind of mode, or it's sort of like the context of the prompt that you're doing, and it's actually rewriting what you ask it so that it's not like talking to ChatGPT like you do say. ChatGPT can get confused really quick, especially the more stuff you ask it, like the more stuff you give it, the more confused it'll get because it seems to have like if it has too much I don't know text in the system, it seems to get confused more. So that's interesting. You can focus it a little bit with these topics.
Yeah,
Uh,
getting the prompts right is like the hardest part of working with these
it's
models, and
true.
it's where,
Hmm.
and that's why you have people talking about like prompt engineering. But prompt engineering is, I don't know how I feel about that term, but it's kind of like you have to say it in exactly the right way to get the right answer, and
Hmm.
that's a miserable way to interact with an AI. Basically, we're then telling people if it gives you the wrong answer, then you just ask the wrong question, try again. And
Mm.
that's, I mean, imagine the whole point of being a developer is that you move quickly. You know what you need to
Hmm.
do. Don't have to say everything out loud. You're using shorthand for things, right? You know shortcuts. You have snippets. If you had to build an app by specifying every single detail, that would be nobody wants that. That is not the future of AI.
Hmm.
So
I can relate to
helping,
that because I think like when I've tried using the current version of Copilot, I actually tend to start in ChatGPT so that I can use it for brainstorming what I'm going to be doing, and so that I can get ideas and maybe some code. And but then when I need specific code answers, that's when I'm in Copilot, and it knows the context of what I'm writing, and it can very quickly get to where I need to go. I do find that a lot of times it feels like I'm wasting a lot of time trying to talk to ChatGPT so that it understands what I'm trying to do, and it becomes like a long conversation that it would have been easier if I just like code it, like you said,
yeah,
right?
totally. So let me show you an example of this. Throw the demo back up, and I'll show you how this actually works. So we agree with you.
Hmm.
The sidebar is pretty good for like sandboxing, right? Like you're playing
Hmm.
around, and if it generates code here, it's fine because it's not generating code in my file. Once Copilot starts writing code in my file, that's a big commitment for me. That's a
Hmm.
huge leap, right? You're touching my code now. I have to trust you, and also if I'm going to check that code in somewhere, it's my good name's on that code. So for instance, there's a new way to also work with chat inside of code. So like let's say, Ray, that you've been sandboxing over here, right? Now you want to get into the code. So for instance, here we have this inline chat, and we can ask it, let's say create an array of users with ID, name, and age props. I'm not even going to say properties. Let's just see if that'll work. Okay, so perfect. But you might want to iterate on this. Like once you create it, you're like, yeah, but actually change the name to first name and last name, and it can do that. And
Wow.
if I hit escape right now, it will remove all of this, and it will be like, okay, he didn't want any of that.
I don't like that, right?
Yeah, you actually have to accept the answers here, which is like Command Enter, like this, in
Hmm.
order to actually accept it. But that's an example of like sidebar chat versus like chatting with the thing in the editor.
Hmm.
But there are sometimes when you do want it in the sidebar. So, for instance, like if I ask it to explain this route, it's gonna give me this explanation, and I don't want that in my code, right? So it
Uh-huh.
puts it over here where it's easier for me to read it.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of
Yeah,
expanded the original kind of Copilot into these sort of two modalities. One is chatting, and then one is kind of like in the code where it can help you,
right.
with what the context
Exactly.
of where you're in.
And things should work seamlessly together, right? So this should just
Hmm.
work with ghost text. And another thing that we're working on is helping people understand what Copilot's really good at. So Like it's fairly good at anticipating what you want to do next in a pattern. So if I'm like, well, I need a fourth item, it can anticipate that
Nice.
really well, right? Like
Hmm.
there's some things that it's just phenomenally good at, and some things that not so much. And we're trying to figure out what those things are.
So a lot of the discussions happen around, the issues that GPT has with what we call hallucinations, like when it gives you an
Yeah.
answer authoritatively that is wrong. Does that happen with code? Because that's definitely nothing you would ever want to happen. Like, how does it try to prevent that, or have they encountered that in this version of, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually one of the things that we've worked on. So for instance, I'm trying to figure out if I can show you this. So we have the users. So let's close users and let's take a look at the app.js. So let's go users router. Users router. What is users router? Users router is exporting. Okay, so it has a get function.
Hmm.
Let's see. This is VS Code. I'm trying to see. Yeah. Okay. So users router dot. All right. So like I don't know. Log in with the users router. What will it do? Nothing. Okay. So it's getting better, but at some point in time, like if you don't have this users file open here and it doesn't know about it, it
Oh,
can
I
hallucinate
see.
about that file.
Mm.
Because again, AIs are like they don't know the answer; they'll just make
Make something
something
up.
up, like
It's
and act
crazy.
like that totally is right. So these are the kind of things that in the editor you don't want
Hmm.
because VS Code already has IntelliSense. It knows what files and methods you have. It's not helpful for us to recommend to you methods
Yeah.
that don't actually exist. So
Right, right.
those things
That's
are,
fascinating to see it working in real time. So I appreciate you taking the time to like demo it. And I'm glad we
yeah,
thought of this like 3 minutes before that's why we started a couple of minutes late, because we were like, how do we get this to work? Let's pull up the demo window and stuff. So I appreciate it. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely.
tell me on a, and speaking for yourself on a day-to-day basis, what do you use, either Copilot itself or just GPT in general? How do you use it?
Um, yeah, so there's a couple of different things that I use it for. So first of all, right now I spend almost all of my time poking at Copilot and trying to figure out how do I help people be more successful with it. So I'm not building applications that are big at the
Hmm.
moment. I'm
Hmm.
literally every day just poking it, poking it, poking it. So for instance, I figured out that it's really, really good at the kinds of things that computers are good at and humans are bad at. And that makes a lot of sense. But specifically in the purview of programming, it's extremely good at writing and deciphering regex, right?
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's
Because
useful.
computers are good at that. Humans are bad at regex. I know probably someone's going to watch the stream and be like, I'm not bad at regex. I'm like, okay, you're the one person because I am. Um, but it's really good at that. Another place where it's really good is like cron jobs. You ever in a cron job
Oh
where you're
yeah,
like, which one
absolutely.
is the hour
They
and the
used to people
minute,
used
right?
to people literally would poke fun at how much I loved cron jobs for some reason, and I
Right.
thought,
Right.
I'd be like
Nobody
that
likes cron
regex
jobs.
guy. I'd be like, why are you making fun of me? It's the most useful thing. So
Totally.
yeah.
So it's really, really good at that, right? You can say write a cron job that runs every Tuesday of the third month that ends in a Y, and it can do it, right?
Hmm.
And then you
Hmm.
can take that and paste that into something like Bing or Chat
Hmm.
GPT and verify that that's actually the right cron job. So it's really good at that kind of thing. It's really, really good at boilerplate.
Mm.
So like
Like we
if you're
just saw,
creating a
yeah.
React component, right, you can use snippets to do that, of course. But Copilot is just as good at doing that because it's seen a lot of React components. And it knows, right, if you're using a class component versus a stateless function component, it knows. And you can just say that, create a stateless function component that called this that returns this. And it's really good at
Hmm.
scaffolding boilerplate. It's
So you saw
extremely
that
good.
demo. I'm sure you saw that demo of like the gentleman from like OpenAI showing a napkin with like a UX thing, and it like made the code for that. Great demo, but I don't know how useful that would be But it's interesting that it could understand like the concept of this is a drawing, and now I'm going to build you something that does that. I don't know if you remember that demo from
I've
OpenAI.
seen the demo.
I'll throw it in the chat as well.
Yeah, so I want to help people here by
Yeah.
tempering your expectations about what AI can and can't do. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible that AI will do that in the future? Yeah, absolutely. We've already seen a demo that it can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend Brandon Satcham gave this great talk where he talks about the Gartner hype curve.
Mm-hmm.
So where you have this thing where the curve goes up and it's the peak of expectations. And then right after that, it just dives, and it's called the trough of disillusionment, where basically people are like, you told me AI was going to do all this stuff, and it doesn't do those things. And then there's like the plateau of realism, where we just kind of accept, okay, this is what AI is good. This is how it makes me 30, 40, 50% more productive. It isn't it's not magic. It isn't going to solve all of your problems as a developer, but it is a tool in your toolbox that is going to make you significantly more productive once you learn how to work with the AI. And the goal of VS Code is to make it easy for you to do that, to take away that curve.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that for people, you hear all this talk about GPT taking over the world. And what I always think of, okay, that person hasn't used GPT to code yet. Because clearly you can see that it's not going to take over the world. It's not doing everything quite yet. And I think that the best thing that you could do right now is try to figure where it can help you and to do those things that are maybe cumbersome. It does a fantastic job at calming things, or perhaps like guided refactoring of some code. Like, and those are things like that you said that a lot of developers don't necessarily enjoy. I know there's going to be like I don't know, a unit test or debugging type person that really loves that. But I think that it can free you perhaps at the things that maybe you don't like doing. Like if you don't like writing comments, then it can really help you get more done because it will do those for you. And I think so far they've been pretty decent. I don't know what your thoughts are about.
Yeah, it's
GPT
very good at
comments.
that kind of stuff. Somebody on Hacker News said that AI, the biggest benefit of AI is that it removes your emotional resistance to tasks. And I find that to be true. So if you have like a blank file, there's an emotional resistance in you to type anything at all because you don't really know where to start. The same is true if you're writing a blog post or if you're writing an email, right? The hardest thing is like banging out that initial structure. And AI is really good at that. It is phenomenal. You can just tell it like, I don't know, give me a users class that, logs into Twitter, and it will give you something. And then you can go back through and, start to pull out pieces and, then use it line by line. The same is true for like Bing. So for instance, I did a video yesterday where I was pointing out that if you're debugging like a React app in the browser and it throws errors to the console, you can just copy those errors and slap them into the Bing sidebar, and it will give you an answer and steps that you can take, things that you can check to resolve. And a lot of times, when you have errors, they're stupid mistakes, and you can't see the forest through the trees. Like for me, my API was down, so it was just returning my app to me as the response. So my API request would just return the homepage of the app instead of actually returning, because I configured a fallback route. And so I pasted it into Bing, and Bing's like, check your API calls. So I checked the API calls. I'm like, sure enough, the freaking API is down. That was dumb. I should have launched the API. I should have thought of that.
So do you find yourself using things like maybe search and Stack Overflow less now and getting more answers like quickly, directly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, especially I use Bing a lot, and let me just tell you, I'm not shilling. I didn't use Bing very much prior to
to
the chat being added. It is amazing. It is amazing because it's searching for you and summarizing the results. Instead of you going to 4 pages, it's just giving you the answer. It's cutting out several steps.
Yeah, and sometimes you just want the answer. You don't want like a list of 10 websites with a bunch of ads in them that once you turn them off, then you can actually read the like what you want.
Or you're just on some, you're scrolling through looking at all these forum responses. You're like, that looks
Hmm.
right, or maybe this is a better answer, or like, I don't
Hmm.
know. So yeah.
So I have to ask because people are asking this. Do you have any idea when GitHub Copilot will release? And I think you covered this a little bit. And do you think it'll be free for users with a student account? Yeah, that's a good question. That second part,
That's a
maybe.
good question, Alexander. I do think it'll be free for users with a student account. I believe that's the case now for Copilot.
Hmm.
Again, I don't speak officially on behalf of GitHub or Microsoft, so you cannot hold me to that. That is my own personal opinion there. However, as to
That's a
when it
great
will be,
answer.
no, I'm sorry.
I like that.
But the thing is, I'm not on the GitHub Copilot team, right? Like
Yeah.
that is a different product. Um,
So
but
just
I
so
know
everybody
there.
knows, next week I'm gonna have somebody from GitHub talk about all these products. So
Who's
maybe we
coming
can.
on?
It's Allison Waynes. I don't know if you know her.
Oh, yeah, she's going to be doing a build session with me
Yeah. So she's fantastic.
at
So
Microsoft Build. Everybody register
uh,
for Build, by the way. It's free to
yeah.
go
I'm
online.
gonna tell her. Listen, Burke was not a lot of
Burke
help in this
said,
aspect.
yeah,
He
she'll
couldn't
listen.
speak. Yeah.
Ask Allison when you can
Yeah.
have access to. She actually has the answer and can
Yeah.
get you that access. I
So you have to
cannot.
wait next week for next week's show to like get the answer. But I appreciate you trying, Burke. And that demo is like fantastic. I appreciate it.
She's way
Yeah.
smarter than me anyway, so she's going to give you better answers. Way better answers here.
So what do you think, thinking about the future, like what do you think is, programming going to be like in, I don't know, make up your amount of time, 5 years, 10 years. How
Oh
long do
man.
we have, Burke? How long can we stay in this job, this high paying position of being a developer?
How long will we be overpaid? Is that
Or
what
is
you're
it,
asking?
or are we going to be like the people holding on to like COBOL like in 10 years? Or are we going to just be like, I don't know, have like Apple glasses or something and be still coding, but be like 100 times better because of these things?
Yeah, no, I think it will reduce the tedium and the toil that a lot of developers experience that makes programming not a lot of fun. But if we look at through history,
Hmm.
is it going to vault us to some plateau of nirvana in programming? Don't count on it, folks. Don't count on it. I mean, just look at the iPhone. That is a magical piece of technology, and all of us today are like shrug. And some people even got rid of theirs because they feel like it makes their life worse. So I don't know. I cannot tell you. I promise you this: if you're more productive, we'll just find something else to put in your time, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not like you're going to work less. People
That's
always
right.
find ways to make you do more with your. Oh, you have extra time. You're more productive. Now you can do this too.
Yeah,
Good to hear.
that definitely has. I remember, I always say we're still trying to get rid of paper. Like paper is not fully gone. Like remember 25 years ago, people would say if Xerox at Park, didn't release all the technology that makes all the machines that we run today because they felt they would compete with paper, I guess. And has it gotten
Oh
rid
my
of paper?
gosh.
In a way, no. I mean, there's still lots of paper around. Some people now prefer it. So I don't know. Yeah, what's it going to be like?
I think that's a good. The one here's folks, just take away this away for about AI, like because I see it on Twitter all the time. Like the hype is just deafening. I understand. Like people are talking
Oh,
about it's going to change this, it's going to do all that. Like just let that wash over you like a
yeah.
warm breeze and realize probably not. And is it going to take
Well,
your job? Most definitely not. I can tell
yeah.
you with 100% certainty,
All
it is
right. I'm going to
not
quote you
going
on
to be
that.
building applications on its own. Yeah, go ahead, put me down. I've worked with it
All
a
right.
lot. I can guarantee you it won't be taking your job.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I know from messing around with it. It is really helpful, but it's nowhere near ready. And the hype that exists, I mean, it's just crazy with, it's gonna, get rid of all these jobs and all that stuff. I think, yeah, just
I,
everybody
yeah,
just relax.
as a
Calm
parting
down.
metaphor, I would say it like this: if you're driving a car, you can go anywhere you like.
Hmm.
If you have a GPS, you can get there a whole heck of a lot faster, especially if there's traffic. Okay. People don't remember before GPS, we had big atlases and we would open them up. I don't know if you remember this going on road trips and
Oh
be
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know, it's like this far. It looks like 25 miles. right?
Yeah,
Think
my
about
dad had a
Copilot.
whole trip where he had somebody they had their map upside down. So they drove like for a couple days the
In
wrong
the wrong
way.
direction.
Yeah, because
Wow.
they literally, these are a few. They didn't know English, so their maps are just, they couldn't read anything else on the map. They just saw the street, and I guess whoever was in charge of the map, wasn't
Oh,
working.
that person, that person got it. The navigator.
Yeah, he
But
always tells you that they picked up a hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker, they like fed him and gave him like everything they had, and then the guy still didn't know like where he was going either, so they kicked him out after a while. It's a great story of my dad getting
I
lost
tell you, I should come
with
back on.
before the age of like like all this
But
technology.
so the
Yeah.
point of that analogy though is that GPS is a great tool for a driver. It
Hmm.
cannot drive the car. Okay.
Not yet. Yes.
It can tell you where to go, but if you ask it to drive the car, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Copilot's the same way. Yeah.
So what about okay? So what's your advice for somebody who understands that it is going to have some level of impact? Perhaps they want to get into like AI implementation into their own products. What should people be learning to kind of, in a way, future proof their career, or perhaps have something that makes them, be ready for whatever way programmers are going to be working in, a few years from now.
Yeah, 100%. So I would say as far as Copilot goes, I think it's like $9 a month and you get 2 months free. So
Hmm.
I would I would sign up and I would start using it right now and figuring
Hmm.
out what it's good at and how you can be more productive. Do I think you'll stick around after 2 months and pay $9 a month for it? 100%, because it's
Hmm.
that helpful. But you be the judge. Don't take my word for it. You do it and decide for yourself. I think it's that good. You don't need me to sell it to you. It sells itself.
Mm.
As for the other AI, that's just Copilot, though. Let's talk about AI just in general. Get access to Bing, mess with it. Get access to
Hmm.
GPT-3. You probably have already done it. Mess with it. Mess with
Hmm.
Bing. Go mess with Midjourney. Right?
Hmm.
That's a different. I think that's probably a competitor. My point is like go to all these different services and just play with them and find out what they do. Find out what they're good at. What are other people doing with them? Right? Just watch. You don't have to write a book on it, or you don't have to go to take any classes. Just put your finger on the pulse of the thing and try it for yourself and see what it does.
Yeah, I would add, like, if you're a developer, definitely check out the APIs because they're a lot easier than you think to like work with. We had Logan from OpenAI a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how their APIs are super approachable. So if you're a developer, perhaps learn how to implement some of those things. APIs are probably the greatest way to play with them from a developer perspective. They just added plugins to OpenAI, so you can now start building things that are based on the platform that do a little bit more advanced stuff. So that's, as a developer, I think that's what I would suggest. Go see if you can play around with the API. You'll find that it's super easy. And maybe, I don't know, Python's becoming so big in the world now. I guess because a lot of these things were created, it's not a big stretch for you to learn Python if you know like JavaScript. And other than I'm not a fan of the tabs in Python, like the spacing defines like the
Significant white
structure.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can live with it. I was playing around with it for a project that I'm working on, and it was like, okay, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna die if I use it. Plus, actually, ChatGPT is actually good at translating things for you. Like, how do I do this in Python?
Yeah, it
Kind
is
of
good at that.
questions.
And also a little bit of history from OpenAI, but Codex at least.
Hmm.
So Codex was trained with Python. So it's
Hmm.
proficient in 12 languages. It is really good at Python because it was
Yeah.
trained in Python. So if
Hmm.
you're gonna use Python with Copilot, you're gonna get really good results because that's what it was trained with.
So you guys also have a talking about your job as a developer advocate. You have and you alluded to the fact that you have a Visual Studio Code channel that's really huge on YouTube, and you also do a lot of stuff with the TikToks, which I'm not in the
Yeah.
TikToks, but you're like you guys do a lot of stuff there as well, just to reach out to the community. So talk a little bit about the kind of things that people should look for in your channels and stuff.
Oh yeah. So follow us on YouTube, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Thank you for the shameless plug there. We
What a
do a
great
lot of
channel.
shorts. We do I think maybe 3 or 4 shorts a week. We usually do an extension of the week, a productivity tip of the week for VS Code, and then we also do an AI something with AI. And we're basically just showing you all of the new stuff that's coming because again, VS Code ships every month, and when it ships there may be 50 features in a release, and how are
Hmm.
you supposed to know what all those features are? You could read the release notes, or you could just subscribe on YouTube and we will tell you and show you
Yeah.
all the cool new stuff as soon as it drops. We also have monthly release live streams where we talk to our engineers. We stream every week actually, and in fact Michael Chan of React fame was on this
Hmm.
morning. I
Oh
think he
wow.
does some works with
Yeah,
Honeypot on
this is a show that I
document.
try that I feel like I am upset if I miss the release party. I really love that. I really enjoy just the release documentation, but there's something about being able to ask the engineers like behind the scenes. I like that you bring all the different engineers and you people can ask them questions and I don't know, it's you see a little bit of pride in them showing their new, tools and things that they've built. But I really
Yeah.
love that. Like that's probably my favorite thing that I never miss on the channel. And I love like your sort of like short tips and tricks, the ones that are vertical, because I guess they're for TikTok, but those are pretty
Yeah.
cool because they're so
YouTube Shorts.
short that they're just like you can get a quick tip like super nice, super quickly without having to spend a ton of time with the
Oh
show. And
yeah.
then you do have a lot of interviews, which I think is maybe something that you're doing a little bit more lately that I've also really enjoyed. So definitely check it out. So talk a little bit about this thing called
Yeah, VS
VS
Code
as a
Day.
VS
That's coming
Code
up
Day.
next week. This is a great
Yeah,
segue.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can go to if you go there we go. You've already got it up. Wow.
Yeah, I'll
Man,
put all the
you are doing
links in the chat, and I think it's aka.ms slash VS
VS
Code
Code
Day
Day.
or something
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so this
what
is
is this
super
thing?
exciting.
I've never
Yeah,
been
this
to
is
one. So
happening this is going down next Wednesday, right? The 26th. It's going on all day pretty much. We start in the morning. We're going to
Mhm.
finish around 4 Pacific time. I think you can scroll down there. But we're going to go over everything that's new pretty much in VS Code that's come out, in the last, say, 6 months, which is a lot of stuff. So, for instance, we're going to have Erich Gamma, who I mentioned earlier, and Kai Metzel, who's the engineering manager on the VS Code team. We're going to talk about how we actually build VS Code
Mhm.
and ship it, it's always fascinating to hear from engineering, right? I'm just a face. They're actually the ones who know what they're talking about. And then we have like Sandeep, who's on the VS Code team, is going to do Elevate Your VS Code Experience, which this is like the tips and tricks session that you
Mhm.
always wanted, but you never
Mhm.
got. Like Sandeep can do things with VS Code that are unreal.
Mhm.
And then
That's
we
cool.
got stuff on remote. Matt Pocock's going to be with us, the TypeScript wizard himself. He is the
Hmm.
TypeScript wizard, the TypeScript whisperer, if you will.
Yeah, so you
So
have a lot of some stuff on Python at in different
yes, we
places
do.
as
Yeah,
well.
several things on Python. Noah Gift, I think, is an adjunct professor at Duke, I believe.
Mhm.
IBM is in here somewhere. Liam's in here somewhere from IBM. Did you know that you can? There he is, Liam Allen. Did you know you can write COBOL and
What?
Fortran and all that? Yeah, in VS Code. Yeah, he builds an
Liam
extension.
does that?
Yeah, he sure does, man. It's pretty
He does.
incredible too.
He doesn't look a day over 100 to be programming in COBOL.
I know, but he does, and he's built all this tooling. Well, him and his community, and it's just incredible.
That's neat.
So
So
yeah,
cool. So that's like free to attend, I guess, or is it like an online conference
yeah,
you register?
totally free. Yeah, it's going to be an online event. We're going to be delivering it in person from the studio, so you get a high quality production
Oh, hold on.
value. But
You're going to the
we're
studio.
still not
Whoa.
quite back to where we were for
Hmm.
before pre-pandemic, right? The macroeconomic conditions have not improved enough for us to have an in-person event.
Yeah, I actually visited the Microsoft campus at one time, and I saw some studio. I don't know what studio it was, but it was amazing because all the cameras were like robots, and you could like pre-program them. I don't know what I visited. So many buildings. Like that was the interesting thing about the campus that it's like I had to go to building like 96 or something, and then there's like a Uber, but it's like a Microsoft like Uber that just drives you wherever you want to go, or it's like a bus. It's like a city basically. It's like imagine like
Oh,
a city
totally. Well,
with a university. That's kind of what it feels like.
Ray, I do have to go because I have a 3 minutes. I got to go talk to. I'm going to talk to the
Okay.
Make Code. Have you tried Make Code Arcade, by the way?
No, but that's definitely something I'll
Just
look up.
Google
So
it. Yeah,
let
just
me
Google it.
close up.
Go. Yeah,
See,
it's
no problem. So yeah, thank you. Listen, thank you so much for coming to the show. I just want to say that plug in that next time we do have Allison Waynes, and you kind of talked a little bit about her. She's the senior product manager at GitHub, and we're definitely going to ask her when we can all have this new Chat GPT. So thank you so much for coming. I know you're a busy man. Oops, you're a busy man, Burke. So I appreciate you taking the time to come talk to me.
not a. Thanks for having me. What a pleasure
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been. Thank you,
It
chat.
was a great
Good to
chat.
see everyone.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later. You take care.
All right, bye, folks.
All right, bye bye.